Very good evening all. Welcome back to another session with the Madras Club. Today we have Ms.Vicky Collins-Nattrass with us. Kezia Bulldogs UK. She has been associated with us since 1992 and she is the founder of the Bulldog Day. So welcome on board Vicky on our show.
Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me and understand me.
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Very good.
So please go ahead. How do you feel being on our show?
Okay, thank you. So, you've got a question for me?
Yeah, one second. We will start off with a question. There's a person who's asking about my voice echoing. We have a issue, but when Ms. is going to speak here, so I will ask question and then better to answer. Okay?
Okay.
Sid, can you feel the Okay. Can you Okay, Vicky, can you tell about how you started your dog, especially about your bulldog breed?
Right. I was a farmer's daughter brought up on a dairy farm, so I've had all animals in my life, and my mother used to breed puppies, pedigree puppies, because in those days the ladies didn't go out to work. If you were a farmer's wife, you were always home. So I helped with all that, and one day my father came home and said, there's an American airman and he's going back home, and he's got a bulldog, a female bulldog to rehome, and he said, I want to get it. Well, my mother said, no way, you're not bringing a bulldog in here. She hated the idea. So when my dad brought the bulldog in, who was named Lady Churchill, she sat us all, us girls, all up on the worktop with our legs up out of the way and everything, and she said, if that comes in here, I'm going. But in a very, very short time, my mum and the bulldog were absolutely inseparable, because bulldogs really do pick their person, and that bulldog picked my mum. So that's how I'm associated with bulldogs, because in my childhood they were there.
Wonderful. Yes, can you have the next question?
Yeah.
So, your kennel
name.
Yeah. Significance behind the name. When has this name existed?
Right. Well, it's been established for 34 years, this kennel, but of course at first I used to breed Shih Tzus, and the name is from my daughter, who was highly embarrassed to come home from school one day and find we had a caravan parked outside our house, which we'd had sign written with Kezia Bulldogs along the side, and she was so cross she couldn't believe that I would put her name out there. But it's quite an unusual name. It's a nice name, and people do remember it. So that's how we're Kezia. It's after my daughter. And as I say, it's 34 years since we've had the name. Yeah.
How many show champions do we have produced in the
Sorry?
How many champions do you have produced under the Kezia Bulldog?
None of my own. I've bred dogs that other people have made up, and my husband's made up 3 champions. But my closest is one that I will show you on the PowerPoint in the end that we're doing, because I don't know if you realise in England it's quite difficult to get a champion. You have to be really committed to showing almost every show. It's very expensive to make a champion, because the competition, the champions that already are champions are already in the ring in front of, there. So it's quite hard for somebody to get the champions that's already existed. You've got to beat them, and it is hard. That's most countries. Once you get to be a champion, you're shown with champions, and you're not shown against the ordinary dogs. Well, it doesn't work like that in the UK, because that's how it is.
I understand that. As you rightly said, that's how other parts of the world work. We put the dogs separately in national classes.
Yeah.
We go to the next question.
Even in America, they do they have what they call the specials, which is like the end of it. So all of the specials are champions, but of course they don't. Once you become a champion, you move into specials, and that's it. You're not in with the dogs coming up. It does mean there are much fewer champions in the UK because often we get record holders. And they go, and the record holder at the moment, I think, is 54 cc's.
Okay.
So that's 54 shows he's been to, and nobody else has had a chance to be a champion. So that's it. I think the UK's quite unique in that. I don't think the other countries do that.
Which dog is the top holder? Do you have his name?
Sorry?
Do you have the name of CC record holder?
I think it's Celia Tyler. And the bitch is the Kello White Glove. Both of those are top record holders for the number of CCs.
Wonderful. So you are in Bulldog is that. So the next question, what according to you has breed characteristics on dog, both physical and temperamental?
Right. Well, Bulldog's character, I think, is what draws people to the breed. They've got a very sound temperament, and Bulldogs are medium-sized dogs. They love company and they like being close to their owners, so they do live well in houses. Dogs that don't thrive very well in kennels. There's very few commercial kennels in the UK that have got their dogs all in kennels, because they're a breed that needs to be with people, and obviously if you're going to show them, you don't want them to not be really sociable and to love people. So most of the people who show, generally speaking, if they don't have their dogs living in the house, they certainly bring them in the house often so that they actually live with them. Bulldogs aren't the couch potato that people think they are. Many enjoy a long walk and a run off the lead. They do more exercise when they have company of another dog, either Bulldogs or different breeds. But strangers' dogs often are a bit perplexed by the approach of a Bulldog. It's the lack of body language, especially signals from tails, which is why I personally think the Bulldog having a mobile tail is very important, and very low breathing noises, as that's also an area where they can be misunderstood with other dogs. But I think they're a very good family dog, but I also think they can be a very impressive show dog. So they fit both things.
That comes up as a question. How good are they to prove? And we will now go to the next question. While we were discussing calls earlier, you were saying Bulldogs being overturned and heavy, leading to a lot of health issues. Can you brief us on this question?
Yeah. The features of the Bulldog should always resemble what we started with way back, and it's 1908 I've discovered. Can you show that drawing of what is supposedly the perfect Bulldog now? Can somebody put that picture up?
Yeah. So that.
No, not the head one, the next one.
Next one.
Yeah. That's it. That was actually drawn in 1908, so it's quite a very old Bulldog. But this in my mind is what I think Bulldogs should resemble. A lot of them now have got a lot more weight on than that dog, but I particularly like people to notice the shape of the head, which is a nice brick shape. It's longer than it is wide. So and if you look, that to me, that dog is what a Bulldog should be, and that's in my head. It probably isn't in lots of people's breeders that heads it, but that to me is what I keep in my head when I'm looking to judge a dog. The thing is that starting with the head on a lot of Bulldogs, they've got too much wrinkle if you look at this drawing, they've only got very slight, they have wrinkle, but it's not deep wrinkle. And the deep wrinkle, of course, causes problems with skin and things. And when the health people get hold of the Bulldog, these are the criticisms that we get. So what I'm trying to explain is that overdone is when everything's more. So when you're breeding a Bulldog and starting out with your line, it's a good idea to think that less is more, because if you start off with a really heavy dog, it's very, very hard to get those the features that we want to see, and it's not easy to breed things out in a Bulldog. So you really, when you're looking for your first dog to start in the breed, you've really got to look for the best that you can get, and not think, oh well, I can always breed something different, because what you start with is that's your foundation, and it's important you don't start with one that's got massive wrinkle and overdone. And if the legs aren't, I mean, those legs are what we call tacked on legs, and they're really they're still like that. Some of the breed at the moment in our ring, they've lost the shoulders and they've got very straight fronts, and we call them terrier fronted. And that's a real disappointment to me, because I think one of the lovely things about the Bulldog is the shoulder. You know, when you see, especially on that angle that you're looking at now, much better even than when you're looking face on, when you're judging the dog. When you can see it in proportion, that's a nice feature of the dog. And the whole thing in England has been, we've had to alter the standard and work with the Kennel Club, because the medics and the scientists and the veterinarians all really, they've got a big downer on brachycephalic dogs anyway, but they have there are a lot of things that, if you, for instance, the wrinkle is a breeding ground for skin issues, because it's sweat and hair building up in the infections. Light wrinkle doesn't, and nose rolls in the standard Bulldog has never overhung the nostrils. As part of the original changes we put forward, we wanted less nose roll, because if neglected it leads to very sore and smelly area. And in actual fact, if you look at the side view of a Bulldog without a big nose roll, it does have a nose. The Bulldog is not flat faced like a pug. It has layback, which is totally different. The layback is what you saw on that head. But the nose is still predominantly there. They've still got a stop. And of course, the big criticism in the media and everything is always saying, oh, flat-faced dogs shouldn't be bred. Well, Bulldogs aren't flat-faced, so we won't let them say that. So the breeding research at Cambridge has referred to the neck of a Bulldog as this should be something defined and not stuffy. So you need a balanced neck, and they've found that the dogs that are got their heads in their shoulders like this, they are the ones that likely suffer from BOAS more. So we want this balance and a nice neck. It has to be quite a strong neck, because obviously it's got to support the weight of the head. Not too long and not too short. Before Cambridge did the research, I had told people that short necks looking like the head came from the shoulders was a bad breeding marker, and also affects movement and balance. And it also affects birthing as well, because if the bitch is all crammed up, they've got exactly the same amount of spinal bones as any dog. So if they're crammed together, it's not going to make for very good birthing or anything. So now what's happened is we've worked with Cambridge University about the airway syndrome, which is BOAS. It's known as, I think worldwide, you probably will know the term of BOAS. And obesity is an area of concern by Cambridge, because the obesity definitely in a Bulldog can lead to BOAS syndromes. They can not suffer from it when they're young, but as they get older and they get more floppy and they eat more and don't exercise enough, that's when they will start to make a score on the BOAS score. And then obviously we're trying to get dogs to be 0, 1 or 2. 2 we feel is it's got two levels. 2 has, so you've got 2 here that's only just a 2, and then you've got 2 here that's almost a 3. Well, the 3s are possibly needing surgery. That they are dogs that really are suffering their throat and whatever. But one of the things that Cambridge drew to our attention is that of the 3 breeds, pugs, Frenchies and Bulldogs, the Bulldog's main area of concern is the throat.
Okay.
The nose is not, because it's not pushed in, as I've already said, it's not flat. The nose area behind the nose is not causing the Bulldogs very much problem. We do want to see open nostrils, big open nostrils, but the actual, what they call turbinates, is the bit behind the nose. And in those other 2 breeds, because they're flat, that is an issue. But in a Bulldog, it isn't. So we like to find out the things that we've got that are okay, because we get such a lot of bad media and press over Bulldogs. So anything we can find out that our dogs are fine with, then that's a good thing. So what they're doing now, instead of being by weight, do you use kilograms or pounds in India?
We use kilograms.
Kilograms. Well, you've got your top weight of your dogs and everything, and of course you go to the vets and they've usually got a chart on the wall and it says Bulldogs should be 23 kilograms, it'll say. But this doesn't take into account of the frame of the dog. So the latest thing, and most vets are being encouraged to, instead of immediately saying to a Bulldog owner, oh, your dog's overweight, that they consider the frame. And then there's a body score which you've got a picture of, which is of pugs, which might just interest people. It definitely works better because it's what the vet sees and what the owner can see as well, because the owner can look down on their dog and they can see if it's a bit too chunky, which is better than saying you need to lose so many kilograms off your dog, which doesn't really show. So if you just can give a quick look at the body score picture.
Yeah, Sydney's getting it.
Yeah. Oh, that's the exaggeration. That's it, yeah. So as you can see, they've done this with lots of breeds, and they've been doing it for a long time with Labradors. So you've probably got these charts in your veterinary places with Labradors on. But you can see the difference easily. An owner can see the difference of being overweight and underweight, and it is a lot better for giving people instructions of how their dog is on the scale of things. So it lets people know. We think it's better. They're trying to make one for Bulldogs. When they make one for Bulldogs, I'll send it through to your club so that you can keep it on your records. Okay?
So we move on to a question from regular viewers. Rather coming up. Put it up. So is Bulldog a rap breed?
Yeah, yes, it is now. It took a very long time to get them to approve it, and it had to go through several committees at the Kennel Club and everything. But obviously America uses the ramp, and I've been to America lots of times, and it is very nice to see the dog. The problem in the first place for having ramps was we were a little bit worried that little dog shows would not use a ramp, and they might decide we're not going to have Bulldogs on anymore because we need a ramp. So we were very careful to make sure that everybody was on board with, and most clubs, they have got their own ramp. So if there's any danger of no ramp being there, somebody will have a ramp in their car. But it's still by choice. You can still show your dog on the floor if you want to. It's literally your own choice, not the judges. It's you yourself. Yeah.
So it's the exhibitor's choice.
Yes, it's the exhibitor's choice.
So we have another question from Mr. Ram. So how serious is the fact Bulldog does not have a rose?
Well, when I had my first Bulldog, I paid a lot of money for her from a top breeder, and I was so thrilled with her, and I took her out everywhere and started training her, and every person who knew about Bulldogs looked at me, looked at the dog and said, "Ooh, she's lovely. Shame about her ears." And shame about her ears was the thing, because she tipped them forward. She didn't tip them back in the true rose shape. And she never had any big wins because the rest of her was really, really nice. But I used to think, as a novice person, ears, rose ears, they're only one little bit. There's all this other bit of the dog. But in actual fact, in the Bulldog judging, the ears are very, very important. They frame the face, and a lot of judges are really tight on the ears. You know, they really, really hate flying ears and everything. It's one of their things. So to be very successful in the show ring in the UK, you really do have to have rose ears in the right place. Yeah.
So great. And how is that perceived? Now, just in the US, other countries, I think even in
Right. When I went to the USA for the first time, which is now 21 years ago, the first thing that hit me was the ears were awful. They've got heavy ears, they've got flying ears, they've got everything. And I looked, and the beautiful dogs, the rest of the dogs were lovely, but their ears were wrong. And there's a lot that were very heavy ears. Well, over the 20 years that I've been going, they've really got the ears right now. It's not very often you see any ears that aren't right in the USA now, because I would say that's their biggest success over the time. They still need to work on tails, but their ears, they've got them like this now. So
wonderful. So that gives us a perspective of the global standpoint.
yeah.
For the next question. Okay. What kind of a family the Bulldog needs to look at? What are your screening parameters as you consider home to place your focus?
Right. Well, I think they're a great family dog, but I don't often like them to be a family's first dog with very young children. Puppies are easily hyped up, and many Bulldogs are not given a chance to rest in between, and it really results in a crazy mad dog. Everybody thinks Bulldogs are calm and quiet and whatever. If you have a house full of children that never let your puppy sleep, you will have a monstrous little devil that won't do as it's told, and everything is destructive, the whole lot. So, and the other thing is, when they are 9 weeks old, when they go to the new homes, their teeth are like needles. They are really, really hard and hurt. And when you look at your Bulldog's teeth and everything, you could, as they come to you, they're at the very sharpest. And people think that they don't realise that the Bulldog really, they're not all puppies chew, but Bulldogs chew in a most crazy manner, and they are awful to their siblings. If you see them in the pen and they're 8-9 weeks old, other breeds, if they bite each other, they squeak and then they let go. A Bulldog hangs on even tighter. The screaming and everything makes it more good. So I don't like people to have one of my puppies if I think that it might spend a lot of its time in the kitchen while it's getting that socialising thing, because it won't stop biting the kids' feet. So I'm really careful about that. I don't mind them having them with other dogs. Most Bulldogs will live with other dogs. The thing that you have to avoid is probably two bitches, because two bitches together can be extremely problematic. They can be fine, the mother and daughter, until the daughter gets old enough to start seasons, and then you can have a lot of trouble. A lot of people have to rehome one of them, because once they've fallen out, they really fall out forever. Bulldogs, when they are cross with each other, dogs haven't got hands, so they do a lot of snapping and snarling at the faces. Now that to me is just like us children saying stop doing that, and you know it's that. But if you really have got a problem with the dog, with a two dogs, especially bitches, they will fight and they damage the front legs. That's what they go for. They go for the front legs, and the idea is disable the dog so it can't run away and then kill it. So it's very instinctive, that is, and people that once they start biting, if somebody says to me their dogs snap at each other, I just say, well, that's because they're just saying I'm fed up with that, don't do it. But if they start really biting the legs, then they really mean it, and you cannot leave them alone. They're extremely possessive over things. They're possessive over their toys, they're possessive over the food, and they're very possessive over the people. They, like I said to you, somebody like my mum was the Bulldog's favourite person in the first place. Well, when you've got your Bulldog and it kind of sakes to you, that then another Bulldog coming along, just coming past even, if they are really possessive. That is what I say is the worst trait of behaviour in a Bulldog, is possessiveness. And so you have to make sure you don't put it in those situations. Once you most Bulldoggers I've got 4 here, and I've had as many as 11, and we know which dogs can go together, and we know not to, and we never leave toys down for them to fight over, because it's no fun having a toy if you're a Bulldog if your mate doesn't want it. So they get a toy and go straight up to the other dog and show them they've got the toy and then run off. So it's that is how they are with it. So a peaceful, I say to people, buy them toys, but don't leave them with toys while you're not in the room if you've got more than one dog. Yeah. Let me just look what else. There is a bit of a problem. Do you have stairs in your houses very commonly, or not?
Yes,
yeah.
Well, these days we have stairs.
Yeah. Well, we try not to let our Bulldogs go upstairs into where the bedrooms are, because the Bulldog, when it comes downstairs, is completely off balance. Its head's forward, all its weight's forward. So there's been many Bulldogs over the years that have had accidents on stairs. Someone's come to the door and the dog's come down straight away and it's literally broken its leg. So it's not, hang on, let me stop that. So it's, we try to discourage people from letting them go upstairs. We recommend a baby gate at the bottom. And most of our dogs don't know we've even got an upstairs because they don't go there. So, and what else? Oh, and a secure fenced garden. No swimming pool or fish pond should be open to them, because many Bulldogs we export to Spain, so many have died in the swimming pools, because once they get in, they can stay afloat for ages. Most of them can swim, but they can't actually get out. So then they die of exhaustion. So, and the same with fish ponds. A lot of people have oriental fish ponds. When we rehome a Bulldog, when we rehome a Bulldog for rescue, if they've got an uncovered pond, they can't have the dog. So that's another thing. Okay.
That gave us a big kind of with the Bulldog. I open up. So the next question: what are various genetic deficiencies prominent, and are there to the breed stock?
Right. Now, the biggest problem in our breed that picks up the most on the health testing is cherry eye. Do you get cherry eye in some of your breeds? You know what it is? And there's no genetic testing for cherry eye because it isn't a gene, and it is different in different dogs. The specialist in eyes in the UK told me that it's a conformation issue, the cherry eye. So if they've got a lot of loose skin around their eye, this is when they're going to get irritation and it's likely to come out. There's been numerous studies and researchers trying to find out how we can improve the cherry eye, but it runs in lines, so it is hereditary. But I think she says it's hereditary in the way that I look like my dad, because and our features rather than genes, if you know what I mean. So the cherry eye is the most common thing that appears. But right, when we had a meeting with the KC, which we have to do every year, they ask us, and we agree, what are the main areas of health that we're worried about. So this is ours for this year, was BOAS, the breathing, ocular conditions, which is your cherry eye, entropion, ectropion, cardiovascular conditions, skin conditions, and obesity. And unfortunately, we've only got one gene. We've only got one gene test, a DNA for the HUU. We've got another test for cysteina stones, but it's not as accurate. The HUU one is pretty well established and it's accurate. That's for the urate stones. But the problem with that is there's 5 types of stones that bulldogs get. So people have their HUU test and then they advertise their puppies tested for stones. Well, there's the other stones, Stuvite stones, come in bulldogs as well. So it's a very, although we've got that good DNA test, it is good. And since we've been doing that, when we first started out, there was very few affected, and there still is very few affected. It's hardly made much difference at all. There was a lot of carriers, and the carriers were the biggest portion of the dogs, and then there was completely unaffected. Now we've got it by testing. We've got the same amount of affected dogs, but we've got very few carriers compared to the... So what we've done is we've cleaned it up a little bit, but I don't think it ever was a major... It wasn't something that everybody's dog was getting. It was, when you get it, stones, obviously it's very serious, and they have to have an operation so that they can pass the urine and everything. It's a really, and very painful for the dog. So it is a serious condition, but I never thought that it warranted the attention that it's had. But now, as the health coordinator, I'm quite glad we've got a DNA test, because the bulldog just hasn't got the things that they test for in DNA. As far as things like elbow dysplasia and hip dysplasia, over the years the health have discussed and researched and whatever with this, and in the bulldog's hips don't resemble any of the gun dog's hips or anything, and our sort of idea is, if you want a dog to be like a gun dog, you buy a gun dog. If you're buying a bulldog, they've got they've got very loose joints when they're young, and usually the actual fit of the hip is not that good. But bulldogs, they muscle up. If you take them normal exercise and things, they muscle up and they hold those hips in place. I've been in the breed 30 years, and I can honestly say I've only known 2 dogs that I thought got hip dysplasia and had medication for keeping them comfortable as they got old. It's not, I don't think it's as a bigger issue as some people would like. And the elbow thing, I've only ever come across one bulldog that had got an elbow dysplasia. In America, they're doing all those tests. They're doing tests for hip dysplasia. They've got just about every test you can possibly think of, and then they say this is the ambassador for health. Well, in our bulldogs, we decided that we were going to test them for the things that we thought were a concern. So on our health testing, all the things that we're asking and we're checking are the things we know for definite affect bulldogs. In Holland, they've got them down as having syringomyelia, which is, do you know what that is? It's when it's in toy dogs. It's when the brain is supposed to grow too big for the skull. And I know, because I helped research this. I sent dead puppies to the research laboratory. they wanted to look at bulldogs' heads because they couldn't understand why they didn't have this condition. But I could tell them why. Bulldogs' heads are very slow growing. They don't finish growing till they're 2.5. So when toy dogs, they're by 10 months or a year, their skull's finished. Whereas ours just goes on. Some lines, you can look at a dog that's a year old and look at a dog that's 3, you won't hardly recognise it's the same dog because the skull really matures at a different rate. So we don't suffer from syringomyelia, which is SM on the health papers. So I totally refuse to test bulldogs for SM when I know we don't suffer from it. So that's a big, I try to make sure everything we do test for is relevant and is something that is a concern. So, right. So there is no more genetic tests. What genetic? Yeah, I can see that.
Major issue.
If you were listening earlier, the bulldog hasn't got so much problem with the nose as a pug and a Frenchie. But all dogs should have open nares. But nares that are stenotic in a Frenchie or a pug will cause a lot more suffering and a lot more problem than slightly tight nostrils in a bulldog, because most dogs, when they're running and exercising, they mouth breathe. Athletes mouth breathe when they're running. So I think it's definitely a good thing for us to be able. I like to say, in a puppy, I like to be able to put this little finger. I like to be able to put that into the nose of a puppy when I'm looking at them, and to choose one, so that they have got a definite nose. So I wouldn't say it varies from breeder to breed and different lines. I wouldn't say it's a major issue at all.
At what age do you do that while collecting?
What age do I?
You check that nostrils
when they're growing. Well, I look when they're first born. They're a lot of them. The nostrils are quite tight, but as they grow and then the teething comes, that's when the nostrils change. By the time they're 11 weeks old, if they looked like a little L instead of a curve, then I would say that had got tight nostrils. But they've done some research at Cambridge, and they do agree that as the dog grows and the face grows, it can, but it'll never open up. If it's a little L, it's always going to be a little L, so you probably do need something done. But there's not very many show dogs in the ring with bad nares, because everyone knows it's really important. It's part of breed watch. So.
Well, I think that answers the question. The next one. So, what are the various acceptable in the breed?
Right. I've got this off the Kennel Club's website. This is the ones that are listed for bulldogs. In England, we've got no preference when we show him. We don't put any colour in front of the other, whereas in America, their colours are in order of preference. So we've got brindle and white, fawn and white, fawn brindle and white, red and white, red brindle and white, red fawn, white, brindle and white and fawn, and white and red. And they are the only colours that are in the breed standard, and they're the only ones that we recognise in the show ring. So, and we've got a lot of problem with colour not recognised in the UK.
So according to the colours are the most.
Sorry?
Which colours are the most in the UK?
Which colours are
getting the most in the UK?
Well, it varies. Sometimes in the ring, somebody will have a nice brindle dog, and then when that dog's used at stud, you get a period of time where there'll be a lot more brindles than there ever has been before. When I first started in the breed, hardly anybody was showing a brindle dog. They were all red and white. The most unpopular dog to show is the whites, because you cannot hide on a white. It's so obvious, its whole conformation. So if you have a very good white, you really have a good chance of getting to be a champion, because if it's good and it's out there, it's standing there, it is really, really admired and everything. The brindles, they vary from dark to light, and as I say, it varies, and some of the top kennels never show brindles at all. They only show fawn and white and red and white. So, and the piebald look, some of the big kennels won't show piebald. They want solid colour with just the white on the face and things. So it's personal preference, and I think a lot of people look at what the judge owns to see what colour the judge owns before they go to the show, but that doesn't bother me at all.
That's great. So we again have your question. Knowing that a bulldog should have a red termed as excessive when for puppy.
Well, actually, when we get to the end and we show that exaggeration thing, that's got some pictures of very overdone bulldogs, and I think there's a few puppies there. The old breeders used to say you can't get a bulldog puppy too fat. This is what was said to me when I started. My mentors, who were big exhibitors, said, "Oh, stuff them with the food and everything. You can't get them too fat." But in actual fact, a lot of joint issues can be caused by people getting their bulldog puppies too fat. So now we just want them to have a nice covering. They can be chunky, but we don't want them to be grossly wrinkled everywhere, because especially the nose roll, if it's the nose roll, it very rarely goes back, the nose roll. Split nose rolls, they're very good, because they usually, a split nose roll will go back a bit, and even if it's got a roll beyond that, it doesn't come anywhere near the nose. So split nose roll, some judges and breeders really like the split nose roll, but the general public buying puppies want the fattest, wrinkliest, heaviest nose roll puppy that you can get. So it's a very difficult thing. We're trying to say to people, don't breed those sort of puppies because they're not healthy, and your person looking to buy a puppy thinks this is the epitome of a perfect dog. So it's a very difficult part. Some people pick their puppies when they're very first born, but I don't, because bulldogs change so much as they're going along. I think by the time they're 6 or 7 weeks, you can see how long the back's going to be. You can see whether they've got a well-proportioned head. I like my puppies' heads to be, when they're born, I like them to be as wide at their ears as they are here. I like them to be the brick shape. I don't like them to be triangular. A lot of breeders have got lines where the bulldog puppy's ears are here and it comes down like this to the jaw. I want this nice jaw, and I want the jaw that lifts upwards. So if you breed from dogs that have got this triangular look, you'll never achieve the foreface that should be in the dog, and you can see that when they're 6-8 weeks old. You can see that they're getting that.
Okay. So I think that
does that answer his question?
I presume so. I think you would have got that explanation. The next one from our set of questions. Being a classified breed, the breed present is I know that you're an expert.
The puppy rearing is my forte. That's what I've written my books about. The mistake that lots of the vets and everybody makes is saying that the bulldog puppies can't be born because their heads are too big. Well, if you look on YouTube, one of the British breeders measured puppies' heads in relation to the cervix and everything, and I've had people here with Cavalier puppies, and newborn Cavalier puppies, and their heads are as big as a Bulldog's. So when they're born, and the Cavalier is a much smaller dog, so I don't think that is. We think that the shoulders on a Bulldog sometimes can cause problems birthing. We think inertia is a big problem in Bulldog breeding, where they start off and then all of a sudden they stop. And so that is a problem. The other problem that is big in Bulldogs is that people don't understand that the Bulldog is not a bad mother, but it's a clumsy mother. And a Bulldog will sit on their puppies quite regularly, and obviously the weight of a Bulldog on a newborn is enough to kill it. So they must be watched 24 hours a day, you know, when you've got your puppies. For at least the first 3 weeks, you've really got to be on the ball watching them when they're with their mum because of that. I think that another thing with the breeding, one of the big problems that we're getting in the UK is people are using artificial insemination for their breeding, which didn't used to be allowed in the UK. You used to have to get special permission from the Kennel Club. Well, now there's lots of places that aren't veterinary clinics. They're setting themselves up as repro clinics, and they're doing artificial insemination and various things. They're also using some hormone drugs sometimes to increase the litter size on the bitches. Now, when I started in Bulldogs averagely have 5 puppies. That's average. If you get 7 or 8, that's a bonus, and it's nice. But Bulldogs were never intended to have 10 and 13 puppies, and that's what's happening in the UK now. Sometimes the bitch's body just can't even cope with it before it even gets to labour, and we do have every year several bitches that will die before their due date because they literally have got no room in there for them. The worst ones are the short-backed bitches because obviously they haven't got so much room. But I always say for people to watch when they're breeding a Bulldog, if their bitch starts to look, when you look down on it at about 7 weeks, if it starts to look like it's got an American football sticking out either side, like, if you see what I mean, do you get that? So you're looking down and they're tight at the sides. They've got too many puppies and they need really watching, because if that happens, there's no room for their lungs, there's no room for their organs, and if they've got 10 or up to 13 puppies on board, their just heart will just give out. So we try to get people, if they've got a bitch we say they've got to watch their mouths all the time to see that they're not too pale, and we get them to go to the vets to be checked regularly. And really, I would not, if I knew my bitch by scanning was 10 puppies, I wouldn't let them self-whelp them. I wouldn't let them even try, because I think they'd be absolutely exhausted by the time they got to the end. So I would have C-section. But if you've got a bitch that's from a self-whelping line, their mum self-whelped and they're having 5 puppies, there's nothing wrong with trying to self-whelp them, you know, give them a go, see if they with a vet on standby. That's what I say to people. Make sure your vet's on standby, tell them you're going to try to self-whelp. And there are, on my puppy group, there are lots of breeders on there that have self-whelped their Bulldogs, but there's a lot that have self-whelped the first litter and then the second litter's gone wrong and they've not been able to birth them. And of course, it's not something for novices, I don't think. I think if you don't know what you're doing, you're safer to have a C-section. But if you've had other dogs and other breeding, then I think you know instinctively when something's going wrong. And that's the problem with breeding Bulldogs when you've never bred anything else. You don't know what's normal and natural. So that I think that's the challenge really in the dog.
You also mentioned artificial insemination.
Yeah.
That dogs have capabilities naturally for.
The stud dogs always in the UK, most of the big breeders all did natural matings, all of them. But a lot of them now, even the big well-known stud people, you still take your bitch to the stud dog, and they collect off the dog, and then they put it in the bitch, and so they actually don't meet. They don't meet up really, because most stud dogs that are collected off don't need a teaser bitch. As soon as you touch them, they know what they're supposed to do. So generally speaking, in my lifetime, when I first bred my dogs, when you took a bitch to the stud, if it was a popular stud, a champion or something, 9 times out of 10 you used to get an infection in your bitch, because they were used so much that they were, so then they started saying have a course of antibiotics before you mate them. Well, now, as you know, veterinarians say they have too many antibiotics, they won't give antibiotics. So I think from a health point of view, the fact that these popular stud dogs are being used for AI and rather than actually doing the mating is actually healthier for the bitch. Okay. So I don't think it's a disadvantage, but you are supposed to make sure every bulldog you're using at stud, really, you are supposed to let it do a couple of natural matings to make sure it can mate properly. Yeah. Otherwise, we could end up with a whole breed that's not capable of reproducing in a natural situation. Yeah. Yeah.
So could we go to the next question? The Bulldog, can you brief us about it started? When is it in action? What are the goals of the sale? How much have you feel like accomplished this?
Yeah. Well, Bulldog Day, it should have had its 14th day last year, but was cancelled because of COVID. And I don't know if it'll go this time. And it started off by us going to the Kennel Club for a meeting about the health of the breed, as we do at times. And somebody said to us, what do you breed clubs do for Bulldog owners? So we couldn't really get where we said, well, we have the shows and we have the, and I came home and I said to the chairman of the breed council, we could really do with an event that would attract people who are not showing but have got bulldogs and would like to know more about them. We could tell them the health things. So someone lent us a field in the middle of the countryside near Newark, and we held this outdoor. We hired some portable toilets and we hired this field, and about 30 people came. Well, 30 people was quite good. We were quite pleased with that, but because it was outdoors, it was windy and a bit rainy, so we couldn't give out the leaflets, the education things that we wanted. So we thought we'll have to do this in a venue. So we went and got another venue, and that they said, oh yes, you can come here. And it was a venue that had been used by the British Bulldog Club lots of times for their puppy show. So we never thought. We went there, and it was so successful and so many people came that they were going mad about the parking. All the people who live around there said that the cars were all in the way and everything. So although the day was really successful, the Canine Academy wouldn't have us again. They said, no, it caused too much trouble with the neighbours. So then we went to the main Newark showground, which is where we are now. That's our home, and that's a proper agricultural showground with a massive, it's like an aircraft hangar what we started. And when we first started, we only held it inside this building, but now we have marquees outside, we have traders come, we do our own homemade food, and that gives us the money towards the hire of the hall. It started off really cheaply, but I'm afraid they've put it up and up now, so it's quite expensive. But the whole thing, ethos is it, anybody with a bulldog, even if it's a colour not recognised or if it's not a very good example of the bulldog, we don't mind. Everybody's welcome to come. We do children's entertainment to keep the kids happy while it's going on. We do classes where they're fun classes where people's never shown a dog before, but we let them enter the classes and they win a nice rosette and they go home really proud. And it's gone, like the first one was 30 people there, I don't know how many dogs, but now the last one, there was 450 dogs there. 400 of them were proper bulldogs. The other 50 were various crosses and whatnot. But it's amazing, and it's quite a, and now the people have got a lot of friendship that they've made, and they come every year, and we now do camping as well, so they can come the day before, camp overnight, and they all get together and chat about bulldogs in a very informal way, and then the next day it's the proper day, and that's when we do the profit that we make, which isn't as much nowadays because it's grown so big. We need to pay for various things that we didn't have to pay for before. It's Bulldog Rescue, we send the money to Bulldog Rescue after all the bills are paid. So, and everybody is voluntary, nobody's paid. Everybody puts the work in, and it has. There's nothing like it. It's not a fundraising day. That it's an educational day, and I really want to stress it's not all about as long as we pay the bills. We don't mind. It's to reach those people. That's what we've done it for, and I think it's really is successful. I think it's very good for that. People travel miles, so
that's lovely. The size is 400 bulldogs.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. You know, when you see them all, like a field, and it's got bulldogs everywhere. You know, so. It's nice. It's a very nice feeling. I make a what I call my drop-in centre, because I used to do a talk to tell them how to clean their nose rolls and general grooming for the people who aren't show people. But then eventually I try to do those, but most of the people, they come in what's my drop-in centre, and they queue up with their dog to bring their dog in and say to me, tell me what problems they've got with it. If it's behaviour or, you know, and I cut loads of nails. People come with their very long nails and ask me to do those. So, but we talk, and we've got leaflets about various things to do with the health and testing and everything, so that while they're in there with me, we feed them some information to take home. So education is what was really the whole thing behind it. It is a fundraiser, but that's not its main thing. Yeah. It's information, yeah. Yeah. And the right way to look after it and everything, you know. Because it's hot. On the day that we do it, it's hot because it's June. And sometimes it's been terribly hot and everything. But we've got all those bulldogs. We have paddling pools with water around, and we show people if anybody's dog gets overheated, we show them how to cool them down and things. And touch wood, we're very successful at showing them how to look after their dog in the heat. So that's another good thing.
That's a wonderful initiative. What is it? Breed clubs in India actually take that such kind of let's see how
it's a fun thing to do as well. It's very satisfying. You're absolutely tired out at the end of it when you've packed everything away. And my garage can't be used for a car. It's just got everything for Bulldog Day in it. So, but it's a feeling of satisfaction that you've actually done something for the breed. Yeah, you know, for the future of the breed, the people who are coming into the breed, who are first having their own one, they're the ones who may be the top breeders of tomorrow. We don't know, do we? So.
True, very true, very true. We go on to the next question. So you also well-read the breed. It's part to write a book.
Right. Well, the first book came about because there was a couple who got their first bulldog puppies. They'd used my stud dog, and every step of the way they would contact me. It was before Facebook. It was emails. They would email me and they would say, "Oh, such and such a thing is happening. How can we?" And so I would write them the story of what they were to do. And then over there, when they'd reared their litter, I'd got a little booklet with all these articles in that were useful for people breeding. So I made this little booklet myself and printed it and took it to the shows and things. And then a publisher picked it up and said I could make a book of this. So that's how I started. And I did a 3-book deal with the publisher. But he wanted them all to be hardback, which makes them very expensive. And I wanted them to be able to be bought by everybody, you know, not a thing. So my first book, he printed it for 7 years, and I kept saying I want to update it, and I want it to be cheaper. And in the end, we fell out. So I publish my own now, and it's in paperback only, not hardback, and it's affordable for everybody. So, and then I did do a big general dog breeding book as well for other breeds. But that didn't sell very well, so that's out of print. We didn't keep that. Was also, it was a hardback, so it was expensive. Again, it was £38 or something, which is a lot for people when they just want to. It's the sort of thing you borrow from the library rather than buy, isn't it? You know. So I wanted the one that I've got now, and then I've got my Bulldog breeding book, which still sells really well. I've updated it in 2019 with the local authority breeding laws and things so that it's current. But I also have written another one which is called Living with Bulldogs, and that's for people having their first bulldog, because they really do have traits that no other dog is like. So I've written it. It's a bit autobiography. It says what I've found, that I've used my own dogs as I go along, explaining what they can expect. Like I've got a chapter about biting, puppy biting, and I explain that because people buy a puppy and when they're 12 weeks old, they're ringing us up and saying, this puppy's vicious, it won't stop biting, you know. So I've got a whole chapter explaining about biting and things. So that sells pretty well. That people buy that as puppy packs, you know. When they've got their puppies to sell, when they go, they give them a book as well, which saves them lots of phone calls, that does, because it saves them having to say there's nothing wrong with your puppy, that's normal, you know. So that's what I do. I keep saying I'm going to write another one, but I can't very much improve on the one for the breeding that I've got because I've kept it up to date. So I don't feel like it needs a whole new update. No, I think not fix what's not broken is my thing. So as I say, that's it. I also wrote for magazines when I was younger. I used to keep goats, and I used to write articles for a goat magazine. I've always written about what I like. I've always liked researching it and then writing it. It's always been something.
That's interesting. I didn't know what magazine.
Goat magazine.
Okay. So we go to the next question. What are your views on how this developed over?
I haven't actually written anything under this question because it's the bulldog. The bulldog around the turn of the 19th century, I think they'd more or less got it right, but it didn't have substance because they didn't have dog foods and things, did they? Used to feed them scraps and things, so they weren't very well fed. So it was quite predictable that the bulldog with the new foods would get to be more weighty and whatever. And we've now definitely got more bone. If you look at the old pictures, you'll see that the chests and everything, the chests seem to be there, and then there's got little spindly sticky out legs, whereas if you look at the show dogs of today, they've got the substance of that looks like they're capable of holding up that body, whereas some of the old pictures, they don't, do they? I think they were going 20 years ago, they were definitely getting too overdone, too much wrinkle, too much of everything, and they were making noises in the ring and coughing up the white phlegm that they do when they've got breathing difficulties. So I think that the vast difference has been in the last 20 years. I think you very rarely see that now in the ring. You don't hear many people's dogs. And if you do go in the ring with a noisy dog, the person standing next to you will say, you know, it's self-policing, because we don't want to be seen as that breed that can't breathe in the ring. And the greatest thing for me that we've achieved is the fact we've managed to get the tails to be more obvious how they were supposed to be. We've tried to get rid of those inverted tails which cause such a lot of pain to bulldogs. At first, when I came in the ring, there was very few tails at all. Everybody had got a little tight bun tail, and I got very interested in the health issues of hemivertebrae, which Frenchies suffer from, and pugs. And the curly tail is definitely part of the having abnormalities down the spine. So I've always wanted tails to be away from the body, because they actually do curl in, and curl in was like a pigtail, some of them, and they actually go back into the body, which is a really serious thing. And we should, obviously, everybody breeding bulldogs should be trying to avoid those tails. They should be trying, because it doesn't have to be straight. It can have a kink, and it can be a bit to the side and whatever, but I want to be able to put my hand under it and lift it, because if you can't lift it, it's just a source of infection and soreness and everything. The other thing is, it's the body language for other dogs, which is what I mentioned earlier. Bulldogs get bitten on a regular basis in the normal park because other dogs don't like them, and we think that mostly it's because they can't signal how they're feeling like other dogs do, and the fact some of them snuffle and everything, and other dogs don't, so they take that as being a threatening thing. So improving the breathing and improving the tail, I think, has been a major thing that we've done, certainly in the last 20 years, I think. And now we have been talking about eyes. We've been trying to get the breeders to be aware of the eyes, and trying to get them to recognise when the dogs have got eye issues. In bulldogs, you get a little thing called dystachius, and it's little tiny hairs, and they grow on the inner of your eye, and they rub on the eyeball. And then, of course, lots of dogs that perfect, look, everything about them's nice, beautiful show dog, but they've got eyes that when they're standing there, they're blinking their eyes and things. And now judges, we've had it brought to our attention, we shouldn't reward dogs as big winners if they've got those sort of eye conformation, because if they breed them, they're just going to carry on with them, you know. So that. I think those three things are the biggest things that we have made improvement on, I think.
Wonderful. I think that's a big step forward to breed aspect. We'll move on to the next question. Please, according to you, original title.
Well, I think we in the UK breed the best bulldogs, definitely.
Okay.
I think that the dogs go away, Storm. I think the dogs that we sorry, just a second.
Yeah.
Go on, you can't come in here. Go on. I think that the dogs the dogs that the UK breed, we definitely breed the best heads. I think we're known over the world as having the best heads. It's the envy of everybody in the world. The countries that have imported dogs from our top breeders in quantity, they've also got beautiful heads. Spain has got lovely heads, and Holland was full of beautiful bulldogs, and because they used a lot of our lines and built on those. But Holland's lost the plot now because they've got such stringent health things. They're not even allowed to import some of the dogs from England now. So they've really closed the gene pool down, which is making it very difficult. In America, their standard is smaller than ours, and it's obviously when you're there you can see that they are smaller than ours. They're very nice dogs, but they have got a difference. You can definitely see a difference. Their heads are not what our heads are, the brick shape. Their heads are a little bit rounder, so that instead of getting the length of skull, they've got more chubbiness here. They're very, very good movement. They are. I would say that of the dogs I've seen around the world, that the movement on the American Bulldogs is really wonderful. But they do run them a long way. Their rings are massive, and the dogs have to go a long way. Whereas in a lot of England, our rings are quite small, so you can't really get the effect of a good moving dog. Their tails in America are awful. They know, I think, the tails are awful because they've got all tight tails, and the tail set's very high on the body. The number of dogs that you see with the tail in the right place and a proper tail is few, but they are working on it. But as I say, you've got wonderful movement, and then you've got the tail thing. So it's very hard. There isn't such a thing as a perfect dog. I think that the presentation in America, they do dress up to show their dogs and everything. You know that it's an event and it's a showmanship and everything. That I really admire. I think that's a really good thing. But as I say, I think everybody's trying to breed true to the original type, but you can only breed with what you've got. That's the trouble. When the Kennel Club changed our standard and said they wanted these different things to be, we want to take the words out like massive and all the rest of it, it was obvious it was going to take a while, because you can only breed with what you've got in front of you. You can select once you've got a choice, but if every dog is like that, it's a very slow process to change. I think now we are getting change. I think that the show dogs are probably the healthiest they've ever been since I've been in the breed. So, but the Kennel Club monitor the judges very well. You know, you have to report to the Kennel Club what you're finding. So, yeah.
That's nice. So the next question is about your advice Bulldog diet.
Well, I'm not a raw feeder, and in England we've got lots of people who are raw diet feeders, and I think that if you're going to feed raw, you've got to do it really properly. You've got to research and do all the balance and everything. And for me, my dogs, I feed a kibble, you know, a basic kibble. The main problem with Bulldogs is they don't need high protein, and a lot of people buy the very best dog food thinking I'm paying the most for my food, and in actual fact they're causing them to get hot spots and skin conditions because they're hotting them up, aren't they? Because the protein, it's in horses, isn't it, as well? It's in lots of animals. Too much protein is not good. So I think adult Bulldogs should be fed around 20% protein of kibble, and not I'm not big on the raw feeding, because Bulldogs do have sometimes in rescue. We've had a lot of problems with dogs coming in that have got bowel issues and things, and they're terrible with bones and things. I mean, I don't feed my dogs bones even as a toy, because it makes them a bit feral behaving. You know, if they've got... Sorry, my dog's decided she's going to come in. If you're coming in, you can be quiet. Sorry, that's the oldest Bulldog here, and she does not like being shut out of this room. Sorry. Yeah, so I just like to... Puppies, I think you should feed them about 26% protein. That's the level. And adult dogs, I think, should go to 20, because I think you have a lot of other issues with them if you do.
Okay, earlier you had telling dogs grow and mature after 3 years old. But in what stage a Bulldog would be a usual terminology?
Well, in England, we showing them, we say that they are puppies till they're 1, and then we have the junior till 18 months. But some bulldogs don't mature very well until they're about 2, really. And breeding them, people sometimes breed them too early. I found breeding them on their 2nd season, which is what people told us was a good idea to do, often they're not mature enough to have the puppies. They're not good with them. So we think the 3rd season of maturity is better for breeding them.
Move on to the next one. Being a breed specific pet was just both at home and abroad. What is the difference you observe in bull department?
Well, I've more or less told you that, haven't I? What I think about that, really. The American dogs are small, but they're very good. Movement's nice. And as I say, Spanish dogs, Italian dogs, they've got really nice dogs now because they've imported from England and then they've mixed them. And we've got dogs in our ring that win from those countries. So I would say in Portugal, we've had a top winning dog from Portugal that's won in England. I think there's good and bad dogs everywhere, and I think that, as I say, I do think we've got the best heads. So that probably I'm biased because it's our breed, but I do think that is that's our thing. And in America, when I go, anybody with a really good long skull, they bring the dog to me to show me and say, look, I've got a skull, this is an English skull, you know, they are proud of it and everything. So it's known across the world, that, I think.
That's nice. The next question is this. Do you feel the Bulldog is breed compared to us working with?
Well, I think it's really hard to win the group in the Bulldogs group, the utility, because we're with those flashy dogs. We're with poodles and we're with dogs that, you know, your Shih Tzus with all the lovely flowing hair and everything. And I think if you get a dog that will win the group, a Bulldog, it's got a good chance in the main group if it goes forward. But I think the hard part is getting through where all the utility dogs are, because it isn't a flashy breed, Bulldogs really. But when the Bulldog does get through to the main best in show ring, there's so much enthusiasm from the audience that everybody really does like. And when they start the Bulldog, everybody applauds and acts excited. There's been a few Bulldogs that have won lots of big champ shows against all breeds, but they've tended not to be what we would call a breed specialist Bulldog. They've tended to be more, for instance, they've probably been a bit more agile and a bit more, maybe a bit longer legged, or the ones that have gone on and won and been top dog at the championship shows, they, generally speaking, I would say they're not. They're an all-rounders dog, which means they've looked at them and they're probably excellent movers and everything. So you get some that do that. But in my show career, I think there's only been about 5 Bulldogs that's ever been making it, winning over and over again in the shows. I think if you're thinking you want big wins, Bulldogs probably is not your best. If you want a nice dog to live with, they're wonderful. But if you think you want to, you know, take on the world and win at every show in best in show and everything, you have got to have a really special Bulldog to get that far.
And in India, which is a working group, they have competed against
I can't quite get that. Do you want to type it?
In India, the Bulldogs are in a category, so they get shown against.
Yeah, we're not shown against those. No. So do they call them molasses or something in that breed? Yeah, they're in different groups in your country, I think. So it'll be different. but I still think the Bulldog isn't as flashy, and it doesn't move as fast, and it doesn't, you know. So I think it's hard.
So, what would be your words of advice for someone who gets started with the breed?
Basically, to buy the best bitch that you can find. That my dad said to me, he's a farmer, he was a farmer, and he said, when you're looking for your foundation stock, you buy the very best that you can. And I always say to somebody starting out, you should buy a bitch, because if your bitch doesn't turn out, you can take it to a good dog and try to improve on what you've got. If you buy a boy, you're going to be very, very lucky if your boy is winning stud standard, your first dog. It's very unlikely. And then, of course, you're stuck then, aren't you? You've got a boy, can't do anything with it, can't breed it to, you know. So I say to everybody starting out to buy a good bitch, and have a couple of bitches before you start trying to keep a boy, because over the years I've kept boys, and they've had medium sort of stud work. One of mine had a lot of stud work, but the others have had just medium, because there's so many people, and there's all the ex-champions, they're all available at stud. Why is anyone going to use your dog that maybe got fourth in one class once, you know? So I say to them, don't go down that road, because then once you've got your bitch, you're learning with that bitch, because you take it in and you find out which judges like which and whatever, and then you can know what you want to improve on. Then you start looking at what the stud dogs are and find a stud dog that excels in something that you know your bitch lacks, and that's the way to move forward. Otherwise you just get overrun with pet dogs that you can't do anything with. So, you know, that's the answer to that.
Makes sense. I think so most of the breeders which line is key for a successful breed.
Most, sorry, didn't catch that.
What is it? Successful breeders always recommend the key for
Yeah, most successful breeders have got a kennel of bitches and take their dogs, unless they're people like the Ockabo and My Style and Sealerville, because they've got a well-established line, and they do keep dogs that they use dogs at stud that have never been in the ring, and they can, because they've got the lines and everything. But to start off, you've got to start at the bottom and do it that way, I think.
Best bitch.
Best bitch. Except you've got to look what their ears are like, not like me. Because otherwise you've got a beautiful bitch you paid a lot of money for, and everybody says, oh, she's lovely. Shame about her ears.
Okay. So, this is really about
Well, when I started, everybody did have a mentor. Especially if you were buying a dog from a kennel that was a top kennel, which I'm saying you should be looking for a really good one. If you so when it never occurred to me not to listen to the older people who've been in the breed a long time. I used to go and sit with them, and they'd get all their pedigrees out, and they'd show you the dogs that's on your pedigree. They knew what they looked like and everything. They knew what colour they were, and they knew what the faults were. And mentors really like that are priceless, because when you first start, you've got a pedigree with loads of names on, but it doesn't really mean much. And when you start looking for photos of them, we all know photographs can tell a different story to the reality, because everybody stacks their dog in a wonderful way that makes it look like it's got lovely stifles or something, and in the end the actual dog, if you see it, is upright in stifles. So mentoring, I think, is a really good thing. Unfortunately, we've got a different mentality nowadays. Everybody wants to be the best and the winner and the top one straight away. They are not there's not a lot of people who will listen to we've got an ageist society, I think. Instead, in my way, when I was growing up, if somebody a lot older was giving me some advice over anything, I would think, well, they know more than me because well, they don't think like that now. So and I know a lot of people who have mentored people, and then they've been rejected by them and whatever. And a lot of people don't want to do it now. They don't want to be mentoring people. I mentor people. You might have heard of the dogs Rickatori. Have you heard of the Rickatori kennel? They got best in show at Crufts, I think 2 years ago. She didn't have any dogs off me, but she spent ever such a lot of time. I had time for her, and we talked about all the Bulldog breeding and everything. And I think she would say I mentored her as she was going, and she's now one of the top ones. So I think it's very important, but I don't think it's something that a lot of people now put the weight on. I don't think they think that that's so good as it is. But I wouldn't be what I am now without the mentoring I had. I had really the best mentoring, so I like Norman Davis, Ockerbo, and the Cottons, which were Aldridge. They were my two mentors, and they were really good.
Wonderful. I think that in this discussion, thanks a lot for your time, a lot for patience, a lot of math. Really appreciate it.
Do you want to just show that a slide show of this? Let me just explain what it is. This, we touched on colour and everything when we were talking, and we're having a lot of trouble in the UK. We're having a lot of trouble with people saying that these bulldogs are the same as our bulldogs. So these are the bulldogs that are around in the UK being offered at stud, and they're called bulldogs. And as you can all see, they're absolutely not what we want. You can see overdone here. You can see the wrinkles and things. The one at the top is one that they're calling toad-like bulldogs, and they're getting popular, and that's really worrying for us. The one underneath, he's being offered at stud. He's had his health test, and he's passed his health test, but looking at him, he's so overdone. He's everything I've been trying to explain to you that we don't want. And then you've got the different coloured ones. Now, tricolour bulldogs have always existed in the breed. I got a lady who's a friend of mine, had a red dog and a red bitch, and she produced a litter of tricolour bulldogs, and she was horrified because it's a throwback and it exists in the breed, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. In the past, people didn't sell them. They'd give them to their friend. They wouldn't register them because they weren't the right colour for the breed. So now, of course, people soon thought, oh, these are rare, these will be worth money. So now they're breeding them to each other now. So you've got a huge amount of those, and you've got these horrible lilac-y colours that are sort of a funny blue colour. Usually their eyes aren't the right shade, they're not dark eyes, and if you know bulldogs and like bulldogs, you'll know that the dark eye is one of the main attractions of a bulldog. They've got lovely soulful eyes. Well, when you look at these and they've got blue eyes or amber eyes, they look like devil dogs. They're not what we want at all. So that's that first slide. And these are dogs, as I say, some of them are actually being offered at stud. You can't believe somebody would think. And you can see a few ears that are wrong on there as well. You can see there's one in the middle there with horrible ears. So do you want to do the next slide? Right. What I did is I've got these two dogs. This dog here, the girl dog number 2, she's out of my breeding. She's the one that is the champion that's out of the breeding that I've done. She is really my only champion, but I only owned the parent, bred the mother, and owned the stud dog. But anyway, she's what I would call an unexaggerated bulldog. She's got everything in the right place. She's got nice ears and everything. Now look at the other one, the state of that. that is just not what we want. We're not trying to breed those, but people are using those at stud, which is really distressing. And that's Merle as well, which aren't allowed to be registered in the UK in Bulldogs. You can't have a Merle one. So if you go on the next one, what I did on the next screen, what I did was a critique of this dog, as if I was going over him as a judge, saying that this is being offered at a fertility clinic. It's not a show dog. It's a classic example of overdone exaggeration. We've worked hard to explain to breeders that this is unacceptable. Starting at the head, far too many and too deep facial folds against the breed standard, ask for fine, obviously needing care to become free of staining. The skull shape is not a brick shape as is required in the breed standard. It's also described as a cabbage head by people. Looking at the face, it falls away from the nose, so there's no upsweep and there's no length. So the folds on the neck and the dewlap create a health hazard for breeding according to the Cambridge research. The dog needs a defined neck, and ones like these are affecting the breathing. Boas, too much loose flesh hanging. The shoulders are overdone and exaggerated. The length of back from neck to tail is too short. It's got an incorrect roach, and the dog looks stuffy, lacking in neck. The tail cannot be seen, but from the side profile it's not correctly placed where it appears to be. And there is not a good tuck-up, which is, I presume you know what the tuck-up is. It's I don't think you can't see me do it. The tuck-up is the belly, where that you get your deep chest and then it should tuck up. And as you can see, there's not much tuck-up on that. And that really is indicating that dog has got a high body score for obesity, how it looks. And he's mouth breathing, which could be heat or stress. And lastly but not least, the dog is Merle, so it cannot be registered even as a non-standard colour because health is affected by the Merle gene. So if we do the next one. Yeah. Now this is my breeding. This is a female champion, not bred by me, but out of my breeding on both sides. Critiquing her head, she's got correct brick head, longer than wide. She has wrinkle, but finer, no deep folds to get sweat, sore and stained in. The nose roll is split, which avoids the heavy, sweaty flesh overhanging the nose. Her eyes are not crowded by folds impinging on the way so that would increase them getting irritated. The foreface is wide. Now, one of my favourite things when I'm looking for a bulldog is I want them to have a wide jaw here, and I want their jaw to sweep up. She's got a lovely upsweep. But you can see dogs that have won lots even that have not got that upsweep. That's something we're trying to protect and keep in the breed because it can be easily lost. Her ears are correct. As I say, they're not. It's not a cosmetic desire. When we say to people we should have rosed ears, having worked in rescue, I know that the number of bulldogs that come in that's got folded over ears like that, they've usually got sore ears because bulldogs are narrow canals. So if their ears are rosed and back, at least the air can get to them. So it's not just something for because we want it and we like the look of it. It has actually got a purpose, that it's a good ear shape. Yeah, yeah, and she's balanced. Her head is not out of proportion with her body, and she's got strong shoulders. She's got a deep chest with no overhanging dewlap. She hasn't got much here at all, and she has a great tuck up, which you can't see, and she's not considered overweight. So if you turn on the next page, that's her sideways. She's got the tail is in the right place. A lot of the American dogs tail sets are too high; they're right up on the bottom. So you want your roach and then your tail to come and follow down. So she's got the tail shape that we want. And because she's a bitch, she's slightly longer. You wouldn't expect a male to be quite that length. Probably you'd like the male a bit shorter, but she's a bitch and she needs the length for carrying her puppies safely. So to me, she is a good example. So if you turn over on the next. Now these are not just the one that I've just showed you. These are dogs that are in the ring at the moment. Well, they were before COVID. these are top winning bulldogs in the UK, and I hope everything that I've talked about, you can see what people have been working on here. And I mean, this one here with the upsweep in the middle, the one with the blue lead on and everything, he's got such a sour and bulldog expression. That sort of expression is what the bulldog's supposed to be famous for and called the sour mug for. So, and as I say, if you look, all the ones I've chosen have all got this upsweep. There's a lot of dogs that have got, can you see what's in it? There's a lot of dogs that have got, hang on, this way, no, this way. There's a lot of dogs that their teeth come out and they don't sweep, hang on, it's very odd, it's opposite. They just turn up at the ends. Well, these dogs that I've got there, their jaw starts here to do the sweep, and it's a rounded upsweep. That must be looked at if you're going to breed bulldogs. That's something you need to study in the standard. That foreface, because it's a really important part. Anyway, they're the dogs that I took to one of the big health conferences where there was charities there, because I wanted to say these dogs are nothing like that first lot of dogs that we saw, and this is what we're aiming for. So that's about it then.
Thanks a lot.
Is there any questions that anybody wanted?
All the questions when they came up.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm sure there will be questions in the days to come.
Yeah.
I will forward.
Yeah, I'll answer any questions and everything. And I've got my puppy rearing group, so if anybody is really struggling on Facebook, they can find my puppy rearing group. But if they try to join because they're from a foreign country, they should have to put "been to Vicky's seminar" when they ask, been to Vicky's talk, so that they know that they know what our group's about. So then they'll get accepted. So
We'll do that. I will make a post for the page that we are doing now, so that people are aware of it and they may join.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Vicky. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Dear audience,
I don't know how long. We've been a long time, haven't we? Oh dear.
Yeah, we are here for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah. Okay then. Thank
you
you
all.
very
Have a
much.
good day.
Thanks for asking me. Okay. Bye. Bye.
Picture, see by. Thanks.